the work on earth is done. Jesus, my Redeemer, name above all names, precious Lamb of God, Messiah, all for sinners slain. Thank you, oh my Father, for giving us your Son and leaving your Spirit till the work on earth is done.
Well, welcome to our Good Friday experience. My name is Isaac, and I am part of the team here. This service looks a lot different than our normal Sunday morning experience. First off, we're missing a whole middle section of chairs, so that's new. And we've got a blue tarp, and we're going to figure out what that's for in a second, right? But this service, Good Friday, is really space for a couple of things. The first thing that the Good Friday creates space for is space to remember the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross and everything that he endured and suffered for us. It's also a space for self-reflection, a space for us to sit and look within ourselves and evaluate where we stand, where we are in our relationship with God at this very moment. So it's a space to remember, it's a space to self-reflect, and it's also a space to kind of explore why. What is the reason that Jesus had to die, the reason that he had to suffer? And so I kind of want to answer that last question first. What is the reason for Jesus to go to the cross and to suffer on our behalf? And the answer is, it's because of the sin in our lives. Living within a reality of sin causes us to experience brokenness. We understand this feeling of being broken. This word sin may not be a word that is in every one of our vocabularies, right? It's not a word that you hear often. When somebody makes a mistake, you don't sit there and they go, oh, I sinned. It's not something we hear often. But the feeling of sin, the consequences and the impact of the brokenness and the shattering of our lives that it causes is something that we're all too familiar with. There's this collection of poems in the Bible called the Book of Psalms. And this book is people expressing their emotions to God. And you see an array of emotions that these authors express. But one of them is this emotion of sharing the brokenness that they feel from living in a world that is permeated by sin. And we just saw one of these in Psalm 42. I'm going to come back to it real quick. Psalm 42, verse 2 and 3, it says, "My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears have been my food day and night, while they say to me all the day long, where is your God?" There's another one, Psalm 22, verse 1 and 2 says this, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the works of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest." Psalm 38, 8 through 11. "I am feeble and crushed. I groan because of the tumult of my heart. O Lord, all my longing is before you. My sighing is not hidden from you. My heart throbs, my strength fails me, and the light of my eyes, it also has gone from me. My friend and companion stand aloof from my plague, and my nearest kin stand far off." Have you ever felt this way? Have you ever had a moment, an experience where you felt so broken that it feels like your heart is just longing for something greater? That it feels like the light has gone out from your eyes. It feels as if your bones are being crushed, where tears are flooding day and night, where you feel alone, where you think God has completely forsaken or abandoned you, where you cry out again and again, and it feels like there is no one answering. If you have experienced any or all of what I'm describing tonight, then you have experienced the impact of sin in this world. I think for many of us, we've kind of watered down this idea of sin. We just kind of think of it as this idea of the bad things we do, the mistakes we make in life, and it's so much more and so much deeper than that. It's not just the bad things that you do, but it's the impact that I feel when the sins of others impact me. It's the brokenness that I experience when your sin impacts me indirectly or directly. It's not just the sins that I do or the sins that others do. It's the impact of living in a world that is corrupted by sin. Anytime that we experience sickness or death or natural disasters or anything that's entirely out of control, it's a direct result of the fact that we live under the curse of sin. And so sin is so much broader than what we understand, and it breaks us. The biblical understanding of sin is this idea that it can start small, but ultimately there's a point where it shatters, like glass. All glass has a point to which it will shatter. And our lives, like this glass, when we experience living in a reality of sin, it may start as a small crack or just a scratch on the door, but ultimately we will reach a point where it shatters. Maybe for you, it started as just a little white lie. It started as kind of this moment where it didn't seem like much, and then that one lie became a habit of lying. And it happened again and again, and now you don't even recognize who you are. You're just like, look yourself in the mirror, and you're like, it's kind of this Jekyll and Hyde act. Maybe the teasing didn't bother you much, but as you kind of grew up and it grew again and again, you realized, man, like I don't even know who I am anymore. Like this has completely crushed my identity and my self-value and my self-worth. Maybe it happened all at once that you went for a routine checkup and you came back with a diagnosis and prognosis that has completely flipped your world upside down. Our lives, like glass, kind of start whole, and maybe it starts as a crack, but there is always a moment in which the entirety of it shatters. And we're left broken, looking at the mess that is before us. looking at the shards of our reality and wondering, how in the world are we going to pick up these pieces? We live in a world that is completely broken and shattered by sin. So maybe you're walking into the room with a sin problem. Not just the bad things you do, but something that expands much farther. So this is what we want to do. We want to create a space for us to self-reflect. We don't just look at the why, but we want to reflect. So I know what you're wondering, what's in the middle. What I'm going to invite all of us to do, myself included, is on these stations you're going to see these plates with little colored plastic sheets, because I don't want anybody to cut their hands on glass, right? That'd be bad. And these are the ways that we reflect on the fact that our lives have experienced brokenness of some capacity. Maybe for you, it is something that you've done or are actively doing, that you are experiencing the consequences of that. You're noticing the way that it's breaking yourself and breaking the people around you. If that's something that you're dealing with, you'd come up and you'd grab a Sharpie and you'd write that out. You can be as vague or as detailed as you want. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something that other people have done to you. But the reality is that you feel broken because of the way others have treated you, and it's their sin that leaves you in a state of brokenness. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with people at all. You're coming in with the weight of living in a world in the day-to-day of a broken reality. Here's my invitation. I think all of us are going to get the most out of tonight. And this is why I'm the first one to awkwardly stand. I'm the first one to stand up in front of this table, right? So nobody has to be the first one to do it, right? So that we have the opportunity together to sit and reflect. Here is how living in a sinful and broken world is breaking me. So you're going to come up here. You're going to write out what that is. You can be as vague or as detailed as you want. You're going to take this. You're going to hold on to it for now. Put the Sharpie back, because people need it. And you're going to go back to your seat. And as we sing these next songs for about 10 minutes, you're going to keep looking at this and listening to the words, and you're going to ask yourself the question, does God understand this? Does God understand what I'm going through? Some of you know immediately what that thing is. Some of you, it may take a little bit of time, but this is the opportunity for self-reflection and for response, and I'm going to ask and encourage that you do so.
Do you feel the world is broken?
We do.
Do you feel the shadows deepen?
We do.
Do you know that all the dark won't stop the light from getting through?
We do.
Do you wish that you could see it all made new?
We do.
Is anyone worthy? Is anyone whole?
Is anyone able to break the seal and open the scroll? The Lion of Judah, who conquered the grave. He was David's root and the Lamb who died to ransom the slave.
Is he worthy? Is he worthy
Of all blessing and honor and
glory? Is he worthy of it? to break the seal and open the scroll. The Lion of Judah, who conquered the grave. He was David's root and the Lamb who died to ransom the slain. Is he worthy? Is he worthy of all blessing and honor and glory? Is he worthy of it?
I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. You answer the cry of the broken. You answer the cry of the broken. You answer the cry of the broken.
Sing it one more time.
You answer the cry of the broken. You answer the cry of the broken. You answer the cry of the broken.
Does God understand our brokenness? Does he understand this feeling of brokenness? Like, look in front of you for a moment and ask yourself, does God understand this? Does he understand me? Does he understand what it's like, the emotions that I go through, the burdens that I'm carrying? Does he understand the pain that I've endured? Does he understand the consequences of the sin I commit in my everyday life? Does he understand? Do we have a God that just sits there and watches us suffer? Or do we actually have a God who understands, like we understand, the reality of living in a sinful and broken world? Look again. Does God understand? Maybe this is not a big deal that you're in right now, or maybe you're living out your worst case scenario. Does God understand that? Well, let's play it out. And let's look at the story of Good Friday and see if God understands. Our story really opens in the garden. Jesus is praying over this night. He knows what is about to happen, what he is about to go through, the things he's about to suffer. And Luke has a really interesting account. This is one of the biographies of Jesus. And he has a really interesting account because he's describing the emotions and the things that Jesus is physically going through as he's praying. It says this in Luke 22, 41 through 44. And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. And get this, and there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Our story, we see Jesus so anxious about what is about to happen, what he's about to endure, asking God if there's any other way that this can take place, to the point where his body is physically responding, and he is anxious, and he's sweating blood. And after this, we see that Jesus is then betrayed by one of his closest friends, Judas, who shows up and he's arrested. We pick up our story kind of where Jesus is arrested and he's held in custody. And Luke 22, 63 through 65 is the next thing we see Jesus endure. Now the men who were holding Jesus in custody were mocking him as they beat him. And they also blindfolded him and kept asking him, prophesy, who is it that struck you? And they said many other things against him, blaspheming him. So not only have we seen Jesus have this visceral response in the garden. He is now betrayed by one of his closest friends and is now enduring physical beatings and mockings from these guards. He shows up in front of these chief priests where he's going to stand his first trial, and they're going to do anything they can to convict Jesus of crimes. And so we see this trial, and it's interesting. In Mark 14, 55 and 56, now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. For many bore false witness against him, but their testimony did not agree. I would encourage you to read this whole story, but I'm going to stop here. The reality is that, Mark is trying to show us that no testimony for Jesus' death is going to hold up in court. But the reality is so many people are falsely accusing him that the chief priests are like, all right, that's all we need. And so he has his people. The people were probably cheering for him as he arrived in the city the week before are now making up stuff about him and saying that he did and said all these things just so that they can kill him. And Jesus responds with nothing. He just sits and takes it. And the chief priests say, that's enough. All right, let's hand him over to our Roman governors. And so they hand him over to this guy named Pilate, who finds nothing wrong with Jesus. And so he's sitting there and he's like, all right, maybe if I have him go through another beating, and so they beat him one more time, that'll appease the people enough, but it wasn't enough. And he's like, all right, I see that this man is innocent, so I'm going to pass him off to the Jewish king. And so he goes to Herod. And the Jewish king Herod looks at Jesus, and this is what he goes through with Herod. In Luke 23, 9 through 11. And Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. So basically, the people who are sitting there, Herod is being like, all right, well, I think this man is innocent, but that's not going to stop me from mocking him myself and having my people mock him. And so they mock him and do all this stuff and then send him back to Pilate and say, you figure it out. You're the Romans. You got to figure out what to do with him. And so Pilate sits there and tries to work this out. You see, we're in the middle of this festival, and during one of the feasts of this festival, Pilate has made it a tradition that he's going to release a criminal back to the people. And so he's like, maybe it's just the chief priests that are the problem, and if I can get enough people to get Jesus, I can free this innocent man. And so he brings up Jesus and the worst criminal imaginable. He is a murderer during an insurrection. His name's Barabbas. And the issue with that is not just that he was killing people, but the issue was that because it was during an insurrection, because Barabbas was murdering people, that means a ton of innocent Jewish people are getting murdered by the Romans because of Barabbas' actions. So the last thing you want is a guy who's stirring up trouble. So he's like, let me pick the worst person possible and Jesus and have them decide. And so he brings this out, and this is the story that unfolds. Now at the feast, he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, do you want me to release you for the king of the Jews? For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd and to have him release for them Barabbas instead. And Pilate again said to them, then what shall I do with the man that you call the king of the Jews? And they cried out again, crucify him. And Pilate said to them, why, what evil has he done? But they shouted all the more, crucify him. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. We see Jesus in the garden sweating blood, betrayed by one of his closest friends. Where are the rest of his friends? They completely abandoned him. He's alone. Not only this, but he's now been beaten twice. He shows up. He's been mocked by his own people. He stands out in front of a crowd that just last week was cheering for him, praising him for walking through the streets. And now they're chanting for his own death. He's completely hated and despised by the people within his town and community. We also see in this verse that he was scourged. I'm not going to get too graphic here because there are children in the room. But basically, this is an act of flogging where they take a whip that has 9 strips of leather, and at the end of the leather is jagged glass, ceramic, and metal. And they would hit you 39 times because 40 is what was believed would kill a man. So literally, they are bringing Jesus within an inch of his life. Not only that, but they do this as well in Mark 5, or 15, 17, and 19. They clothed him with a purple cloak and twisted together a crown of thorns. They put it on him. And they began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they were striking his head with a reed and spitting on him and kneeling down in homage to him. They anointed him with a crown of thorns, and it's like thick thorns if you do the research on the thorns that Jesus had in his head. And then they would hit him in the head with this crown of thorns on his head. And they would spit on him and mock him, and then they sent him off to be crucified. He had to ascend up a hill. His body fails him. He needed somebody else to carry that cross up the hill for him. All the while, people yelling at him, jeering him, spitting on him, cursing him out. Jesus is then laid out on a cross where he gets nails put through his wrists and his ankles. And he gets hoisted up. And I don't know if you know much about crucifixion, but you don't die from the wounds in your ankles and legs. You die from asphyxiation. What happens is you have to pull yourself up to catch your breath. And that means you're pulling against the nails that are in his wrists and ankles. And then you drop back down. And you have to pull himself up again just to get another breath. And this would go on for hour upon agonizing hour as Jesus suffers. But as much emotional and physical and mental pain that he goes through, this is the moment that we see something spiritual happen. All of a sudden, the burdens of the sins of the world are placed on the shoulders of Jesus at the cross. And it says that it goes dark and that God turns his face from Jesus. Look at this. From the 6th hour, there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, so this is 3 hours of him being up on a cross, Jesus cried out with a loud voice saying, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani?" And that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus feels abandoned and forsaken by God himself as he carries the weight of the sins of the world, the weight of the sins that are on our little plastic pieces, our shards. He carries that weight on his shoulders. After the statement, Jesus declares one last time, "It is finished." And then he surrenders his spirit and he dies. Do we have a God that understands our brokenness? I would argue, yes. I mean, we have a God that is both intimately aware of not just living in a broken and sinful world, but he is also intimately aware of the burden and consequences of sin and the weight that that feels on our shoulders. So let's play it out. Maybe you're living your worst case scenario, maybe you're not, but let's play out what is your worst case scenario. Is it that your friends abandon you? Yeah, God understands that. Is it that one of your best friends betrays you? Yeah, God understands that feeling. Is it the visceral experience of anxiety or dread to the point where you are having a physical response like sweating blood? Yeah, God understands that as well. Falsely accused of something you didn't do or being the victim of a rumor that everyone believes? Yeah, God understands that as well. Being charged as a criminal and given life despite being entirely innocent, is that your worst case scenario? God understands that. Is it to be mocked, spat upon, despised, hated among your community? God understands that feeling. Is it the feeling of being alone or abandoned, even feeling as if you're abandoned by God? God understands that feeling himself. Is it to be beaten senseless within an inch of your life, or to experience physical pain beyond comprehension, or to have your physical body fail you in some way or form, or having your body completely violated and exposed and used for others' enjoyment? Yeah, God understands all of those feelings. Is it the consequence and burdens of sin pressing down your shoulders like a weight you can't lift any longer? God understands that. Is your worst case scenario that you die? God understands that feeling. Maybe it's worse. Is your worst case scenario is watching someone you love die? Or even worse, one of your children die? God understands that feeling. Take a look again at what you have written in front of you. We have a God who is intimately aware and familiar with the burden of sin and the feeling of brokenness. Whatever you have written in front of you, I want you to hear that you have a God who understands. That's what I want you to take away from today. And that if God understands my brokenness, then he is able and he is willing to carry that for you. So here's what we're going to do today as we wrap up this experience. We're going to engage in communion. This is just a small symbolic meal of the body and blood of Jesus, the body that was broken and the blood that was shed. And we're going to take this moment to remember all of these things that we just talked about, that Jesus suffered on the cross. This scandal of grace, that a perfect God would be willing to die for imperfect people. The bread is to remember this broken body, and the juice to remember this shed blood. And this is an opportunity to respond. Some of you that have written down is something that you've been carrying for a long time, a weight that is on your shoulders. And I'm asking you to begin the process of giving it up. So here's what we're going to do. This is an opportunity to take a mental and spiritual decision and turn it into a physical response. So you're going to take one of these little glass pieces, whichever one you took, and you're going to leave it here. And you're going to pick up a communion packet, and you're going to take it back to your seat. And you're going to take it in your own time. We're not going to take it all together. You're taking the sin that you have been carrying, and you're leaving it here and trading it for the atoning body and blood of Jesus that was shed for all of us, because we have a God that not only understands our brokenness, but a God who is able and willing to carry that brokenness for us. If we have a God who understands, then a God who understands is able to carry our brokenness. So I encourage you to stand, sing, and respond in this way.
Washed away in your blood, too much to make sense of it all. I know that your love breaks my fall. The scandal of grace, you died in my place, so my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know. Jesus, there's no one beside. Jesus, there's no one beside you. Forever the hope in my heart.
The reality of Good Friday is that we have a sin problem, a problem with the sins we commit, a problem of the sins of others done to us and the brokenness we feel because of that and the effects of a world that is permeated by sin. But we also have a God who understands, who sent his Son into the world to accomplish what another author named Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21. Should be up here in a second. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, that in him we might become the righteousness of God. It's because this is true that despite Jesus being dead today still is a Good Friday, and we will see you Sunday.